Welcome to Talk Travel with Heather Tate, North Mississippi's podcast for savvy travelers. Talk Travel with Heather Tate is a weekly podcast that airs every Monday on the Shark 102.3 FM radio station based in Ripley, Mississippi, and is then released as a podcast. Travel advisor and travel enthusiast Heather Tate of Whimsical Destinations gives listeners expert travel tips curated through the years of personal and professional experience. By clicking subscribe, you'll have a new travel tip to add to your collection delivered to your podcast library every Monday. Talk Travel with Heather Tate is brought to you by Sun Bear Studio. Sun Bear Studio is a boutique recording studio in the heart of Ripley, Mississippi. When you record with us at Sun Bear Studio, we can mix, master, register, and publish your music, your podcast, or your family story. Email us when you're ready at sunbear@jc.media.
This program was recorded at Sun Bear Studio in Ripley, Mississippi.
Good morning, Northeast Mississippi travelers. This is Heather with Talk Travel with Heather Tate, and I am so excited to share my adventures and tried and true tips with you, whether you are also a seasoned traveler, a hopeful traveler, or currently an armchair traveler, meaning you're going to follow along with us from home for now. This is our 118th episode of Talk Travel with Heather Tate, and this week I'm going to talk with you about something that I would say used to be a secret, but is definitely not a secret. It is my not so secret anymore of my travel tips. And that is, I am gaining a reputation for helping my guests book incredible last-minute deals. So much so that I've recently been on the Sandals Travel Advisor podcast, which was geared towards helping other agents with this exact same topic. So I thought this is something I talk about all the time on our Facebook group, Heather and Logan Tate, Whimsical Destinations. So if you're already a member of that group, you have probably seen a lot of my last minute posts. So here's what I want to talk to you about today. I'm going to give you some of my best tips for how to take advantage of a last minute trip to save money. And then what happens when you can't take a last minute trip without the planning, but you could if you planned in advance. Okay, so first off, let's talk about what constitutes as last minute, because everybody has different definitions for things. So first of all, we need to talk about, when I say last minute, what do I mean by last minute? Typically, last minute for international travel is considered 45 days or less. Some would even say 30 days or less is last minute. And I would agree. Now, I will say my record for a last minute international trip was literally the day before. And I do not advise that. It was a little stressful. We made it work. The couple got to go to the Bahamas. They were just like ready to go, though. They went the very next day after we booked it. There's a little more that goes into that type of travel. But I will say I have done the week before, 2 weeks before, quite often. But I will say 30 days is a great amount of time. And you still get take advantage of the last minute deals. So what does last minute mean? 45 days or less. Sometimes I'll have clients who are like, oh, I want to do a last minute deal like for the pricing. And they're thinking, 90 days or, 3 months or 4 months. And that's not truly considered last minute as far as getting a break in the price. But it may be considered last minute depending on your destination to be able to find availability, especially depending on when you're going. But okay, one of the most important things about taking advantage of a last minute deal, and I say this over and over again, and that is to get your passports now. In order to take advantage of a last minute deal, this is the most important thing that I'm going to say today. You have to have a passport already. You do not, nor will most travel advisors recommend or book for you a last minute deal if you don't have a passport in hand. It is extremely stressful to try to do that. For example, you may think that your name's going to come back a certain way on your passport, but it actually doesn't. Sometimes it comes back as a misspelling, or sometimes there's an issue and it takes longer. Maybe they didn't accept the picture that was taken because it didn't meet all the requirements. Maybe it gets lost in the mail. So many different reasons why you want to have your passports in hand so you know exactly how your name should be spelled for your flights. Because once you book those flights in that name, you're going to pay a hefty change of name fee if it doesn't come back exactly right. So first step is to get your passports. If you do not have your passports, and that's what I say when I have potential guests that message me, they're like, I'm really interested in this deal. Where is it? When is it? And first thing I ask if it's a new client is, do you have your passports? If the answer is no, then I just simply say, this is when you want to order your passport. This is your motivation to get your passport. Once you have it, message me back, and then we'll look at what last minute deals are available then. Guess what? Right now, if you expedite your passport, they are coming in record timing, like pre-COVID days of 2 weeks, which is amazing. All year has been better than even last year and the years before leading up to this year. But right now, it is a great time. Go ahead and order them now. You'll be ready for next year. You'll be ready for December if you go ahead and get your passports ordered now. So 2 weeks expedited, 4 to 6, maybe even 8 weeks regular, which is not bad. If you just do standard, if you're like, I'm not traveling until next year, go ahead and order them now. Don't wait till January. A lot of people will order passports in January because they're getting ready for the summer. Go ahead and order them now. You're going to beat that rush after the holidays. So number one thing, order your passports. Next thing, piece of advice, be flexible. If you're not flexible, or if you can't be flexible, it's not that you don't want to be flexible. It might be because of your schedule with work, for asking time off, for kids and making sure that they're taken care of and who's staying with them and getting them to their activities. You may not have the option to be flexible, but if you want to take advantage of a last-minute trip, you almost always have to be flexible. Do you have to travel on the weekends? Is that a must? That's going to be a little bit harder. Can you travel during the week? You're going to have a better time finding options more affordably if you can travel during the week, not just the weekends. Other thing, check multiple airports. If you think, I've always flown out of Memphis and that's where I will fly, but maybe Birmingham has flights for $200 less a person. That adds up, especially if you're talking about bringing the whole family. Maybe you've never considered flying from Nashville or Atlanta, but I will tell you, my family almost always drives to Atlanta. It's 4.5 hours from where I live in Guntown, Mississippi, to get to the Atlanta airport. And yes, you do lose an hour because they're in the Eastern time zone, so you don't want to forget that. That's an important thing. But we can save a lot of money sometimes by traveling to Atlanta. Enough money that it makes sense to go the night before, so we're not driving in the middle of the night to get a hotel. Still saving money. And also, especially if we get to fly nonstop, we're not only saving money, but we're also saving time and the inconvenience of a layover. So be willing to check multiple airports. Check flights first. Maybe you're thinking, I have availability for the next month. I can take some time off. I need to use this PTO before it is gone for the year. Check your PTO. If you have PTO available, we can plan a last-minute trip between now and the end of the year. Don't lose your PTO, right? That is your time that you don't get back, right? So use your PTO. Enjoy that time with your significant other and with your family. There's no badges or awards for perfect attendance at work, right? You want to be present in your life with your friends, with your family too. Okay, so check flights first. If you have that flexibility, when does it look the best time to fly from these different airports? And that's an easy thing to check on a Google Flights to see, okay, if I left on a Monday, my flight's $800 a person. But if I went that Tuesday, it's all of a sudden $400 a person. That's amazing. You could get 2-for-1 flights just by being willing to change the day. What about combining 3 and 4 night stays? And I say this because oftentimes with my clients, and I will say number one options for last minute traveling for my clients will be Jamaica and the Bahamas. So if those are 2 destinations you've been wanting to go to, those are your 2 best options for a last minute deal. I'll tell you why some of the others are not as great for last minute deals, but that's going to be on our podcast episode, which is the extended version, because unfortunately, this is all the time we have for the radio portion. That's it for this edition of Talk Travel with Heather Tate. Tune in every Monday at 11 a.m. to turn your travel dreams into travel plans. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion for an interview or for access to this interview, go to our website, shark1023.com, and click on the podcast tab. This interview can also be found on Apple, Google, and Amazon Podcast. Keep it tuned to the Shark 1023 and start planning your next trip.
This show is made possible by JC Media, LLC in Ripley, Mississippi. JC Media owns the Shark 102.3 Classic Rock FM radio station where the show is hosted, and Sun Bear Recording Studio where the interviews are recorded. We need your feedback and support. If you listen to the podcast on a player like iTunes, Google Podcast, or Amazon Music, please subscribe to the show and leave us a review. We also have an email in which you can share your feedback. That email is theshark1023@gmail.com. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite app or stream episodes online at shark1023.com/podcasts. Today's episode was produced by Melinda Marsalis. It was edited by Rick Williams and engineered by Chris Marsalis. The podcast technician is Joyce Grady.